Welcome to End of Life University on YouTube. Today I'm sharing with you an interview I did with Laurie Burrows Grad. Laurie is a cookbook author and a television chef by profession, but she has written a very wonderful book called The Joke's Over, You Can Come Back Now, How This Widow Plowed Through Grief and Survived. And as you can tell, it's about her experience as a widow, but she weaves humor along with very practical advice and even some very spiritual topics throughout the book. And it's quite wonderful. And I know you'll enjoy this conversation. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel down below. Also, subscribe and leave a rating and review for the podcast wherever you happen to listen. And go to eoluniversity.com/support to find out how you can make a very small contribution and help keep this podcast and this channel on the air. Thank you. And now we'll move on with my interview with Laurie Burrows Grad. Today, I'm so happy to welcome my guest, Laurie Burrows Grad. Laurie is a cookbook author and television chef by profession, as well as the author of The Joke's Over, You Can Come Back Now, How This Widow Plowed Through Grief and Survived. After losing her husband, Peter, who had been her husband for 47 years, Laurie began blogging about grief, widowhood, and survival. She has published over 160 blogs about grief as a regular contributor to the HuffPost and Thrive Global. Her website, lauriegrad.com, has helped widows all over the globe. Laurie also serves on the board of Our House Grief Support Center, a Los Angeles grief center. And you can learn more at her website, as I mentioned before, lauriegrad.com. So Laurie, welcome and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Karen, for finding me.
Yes. It was almost just like serendipitous in a way that I came across, I think, a blog you wrote for someone else, but it had a recipe in it because I was searching for recipes by people who are grieving. And so that's how I found out about you. But once I read your book, I decided I just had to have you on the podcast to interview you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I thought maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit more about your own grief journey, since that's really what led to all of this, the work that you're doing right now. So,
well, Peter died while we were on vacation in Vail. He died in front of me, which is pretty heartbreaking. I was in total shock. And all of a sudden, I was a widow. And I like to wear a little black dress, but this was beyond the pale. So I actually use humor to get me through grief. So but this was a club I did not want to join. It was a club that I never thought I would join. He had been sick for years on and off, but he always rallied. And so it's hard. It's hard. And I wanted to be a golf widow, but I was a widow and I had lost my status, and people would say, "Oh, let me take you to lunch." And I said, "WTF, take me to dinner. I can do lunch. I can do lunch easy." But the first blog I wrote was called Demoted to Lunch because I was totally without a status anymore. You know, when you're a couple, you can be seen as a couple, but when you're a single woman, it's very hard.
And that's such a good point too, that the evenings can be so very long when you're home alone, and to have dinner out with someone would be a wonderful distraction. But how interesting that people do tend to forget about widows and forget what you're going through and experiencing.
Well, I taught people. I decided, and that's what I did. Actually, Sheryl Sandberg, her husband died in August, right before Peter died, like 3 months before or 5 months before. And she wrote this treatise on Facebook. about what it was like to be a widow. And she wrote it with great honesty. And I thought I could do that. And so I had written 4 cookbooks and I had a cooking show on television, but I had never done this kind of writing. And I wrote prose, and it helped me to get through my grief.
And your blogs are wonderful, and as well as the book, because you are so very honest and so real about all of the struggles, from the mundane things like not being able to zip up your own dress in the back, which I never thought of that before, but all these little things that we rely on our partners for, or we just take for granted, I guess, that suddenly you're confronted with the loss of all of those things.
Right, right. And it's devastating. And I had to be honest. And the more honest I got, I would blog every few weeks. And I got all these widows who would write to me because I was on HuffPost, and it was very helpful. And Ariana Huffington was the editor at the time, and she uh, would blog out my blogs. So, yeah.
So very nice. And I'm sure other widows could relate so well to everything you were writing about, because you talk about all sorts of things, like traveling alone, and doing things alone, and even making repairs in your house alone, and figuring all these things out, and finances, and all issues that I'm sure other widows are confronting every day as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tough journey. It's not easy, but what I discovered was that the writing helped me. The writing, even just to journalize your thoughts, is important. Just to write it out so you don't keep it inside. Because I know of a widow who didn't answer a single condolence note and pretended like her husband hadn't died. And it doesn't make any sense. You have to get through the pain in order to come out the other side.
And the truth is, you only end up postponing the pain if you don't go through it. It
Exactly.
it will still be there, and it will still come back, and will still have to be worked through. So I think you're so very right. You just have to deal with it when
Mm-hmm.
it's in front of you. I'm curious, did you receive any kind of grief counseling or help with your grief as you were going through it?
I did. I did. I went to see 2 grief counselors, and one of them turned out to be fantastic. Her name is Freda Wasserman, and she was so helpful for me. But the other one seemed to talk, and I said, "Excuse me, I can't hear you." And she continued, and the planes were flying over. She was in a flight pattern. And I said, and she said, "Would you like to come back?" I went, "No, I just, I can't come back. I can't hear you." And, and, and so I chose Freda, and she was wonderful. And she helped me. And that's how I knew about Our House. And
Mm.
I joined Our House after 3 months because they like you to wait a little bit. And I was there for 18 months with the same people. And sometimes we get together, but it's been a while. It's been 7 years.
And so maybe you could just tell our listeners about Our House, and what that is, in case they're not familiar with it.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have our big event this Saturday, October 29th, and we are an organization that has groups for widows, widowers, uh, people who have lost children, uh, any kind of loss, and any kind of death. And during the pandemic, we kept it up online because people were afraid to visit in person. And it is an amazing organization. And after I finished my 18 months, I said, might you need my help on the board? And Peter and I, my late husband and I, had raised money for Alzheimer's because my father, who was a playwright director named Abe Burrows, and a very funny man who had written Guys and Dolls and Silk Stockings and Can Can and How to Succeed, um, he had Alzheimer's. So we used to do a big event every year. And for 25 years, we raised $30 million. So I'm trying to help our house in the same way.
That's so wonderful. It's so nice that you give back to the organization that was helpful to you, and knowing how many other people will be helped,
Mm-hmm.
and that now you're making sure that kind of support is available to others.
We also have a camp in the summer for kids, and I went to my first camp experience, and I was shocked at the devastation that some of these kids felt because um, one family, it was a murder suicide, and
Mm.
there were four children left, and it was so devastating. And at least we could help them get through it. So
Yeah, do you find that that has helped your grief in a way to be able to give back to other people and offer support to others? Well, and I'm sure through your blog as well, you know how many people you're helping.
well, David Kessler, who has written a lot, and he wrote with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, but he said the sixth stage of grief is finding meaning. And finding meaning for your loss makes you feel better. There's no question. Uh, I feel better helping other widows. The other day, I got a note from someone who said, "Your book is so real. It's the only book that ever made sense to me." And for that, I'm grateful to be able to help.
It is so real. And as you mentioned, you value humor, and it's woven throughout your book. And I think humor is in your DNA, your father being Abe Burrows, and then your brother also is a
My brother
director.
is James Burrows, who wrote, directed by James Burrows, but he directed Cheers, Will and Grace, Frasier, Friends, every sitcom, and he came out of MTM. So he did Mary and all those things. And yeah, it's funny. We're funny.
And yeah, and your book is very humorous, and you pull no punches. I mean, you're not trying to soft pedal anything in the book. You tell it exactly like it is. But I love that you're able to find humor in almost every situation. And I think that's really a gift that you have.
Well, I have to give it to Sheryl Sandberg because I saw her 3 months after Peter died. And in November of 2015. And I said to her, "How are you doing this?" And she said, "Look at me. I'm 8 months out and I'm okay. And I have survived." And that was the carrot that I needed to keep me going.
Even just the knowledge that you will get through it no matter how difficult it seems right now, but this will pass, this will change, you'll still be here, most likely.
Let's hope. Already at my advanced age. Yes, yes, yes.
Well, I was curious. One thing that you wanted to talk about a little bit was having a memorial service, and so I wanted to ask you about your experience with that.
So we used humor in the memorial service. Everybody was funny. And my brother got up there and he said, "What do you say about a man who sleeps with your sister?" Which was the greatest line ever. And
And Peter probably would have loved it. I said,
loved it. He would have loved it. Yeah, yeah. It's having a memorial was wonderful, and I have him in a box. He is in my closet. I talk to him sometimes, and I want to be scattered with him
Mm.
somewhere on a beach somewhere. So
Have you scattered any of the ashes so far, or they're all just in waiting for the right?
they're in
Yeah.
waiting, and my son knows what to do with them. So
Mm. Oh, so that's really wonderful that you've planned that in advance.
I did, I did. I want to be with him, and I mean, I could never replace him. I can never. I, at my age, I'm lucky if the men are standing upright.
And you write about that very honestly, about trying to date as a widow and the challenges of it. And I don't know if anything has changed since you've written the book, but
No, one guy. This was pre-pandemic, so he took me to a restaurant. I think I met him there. And he said to me, and I'm not making this up, he said, "You're not one and done," meaning, oh, I look good enough for him to repeat the day. It was, and then he turned to me and he said, "Your roots are a little dark. When are you having your color done?"
oh my gosh.
And then he said, "You used to model." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Aren't you too busty to have been the model?" And I said, "The editor has left the building, and so am I." And I got out of there. I mean, I just, it's just, it's not going to work. I'm okay with that. I'm okay.
Well, that alone sounds like a comedy series in a way, the exploits of a dating widow in later life. And it's not, I mean, it's not that late in life, but I'm sure it's very challenging just
It
trying to
is.
meet someone that you can even enjoy their companionship.
I know. I know. It's very hard. One guy, this was early on, one guy picked me up and took me to the Tutankhamun exhibit at the Natural History Museum downtown. And I said, "Where is the air conditioning in your car?" And he said, "Roll down the window."
Oh,
So he took me to the exhibit. We seemed to have a nice time. He put me back in the car and he took me home. There was not a beverage, there was no water, there was no coffee, there was nothing. And I thought of like Larry David saying, "You got to have a beverage on a date." I mean, it was just
at a
ridiculous.
minimum, that's a
Yes,
minimum.
minimum. Yes, yes, yes. Anyway, those are my exploits, and I'm done. I'm done dating.
Well, it's so true. I think about this with my husband. We talk about this all the time that how do you replace all this history that we've had together? Like, you could never find anyone that you would share the same depth in terms of all these shared lived experiences that you have together, that it would end up being a completely different type of relationship in a way, starting from scratch at a later age. And that's very challenging.
Yeah, I'm not up for it.
So, have you gotten used to doing more things alone, traveling alone, and being by yourself?
Well, the pandemic hit and nobody wanted to travel. But I did at first. I went to New York and a couple of times. I used to go to New York a couple of times a year. That's where I grew up. So I was born actually in LA. I'm one of a very few native born LA people, but I have a lot of friends in New York. And now they're all moving out here because of the weather and politics. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So, it is nice having friends in places at least to go visit. So, you fly there alone, but you have someone to see and
oh,
stay
I
with.
was
And
busy and I have three nieces in New York, and yeah, my brother's girls are all in New York, and it was lovely. So
that
I was
sounds nice.
okay traveling. But it was interesting. Somebody wrote me the other day and she said, the hardest thing is to travel because we always held hands when the flight was going up and the flight is going down. And that hit me the first time. Um, that was really hard. And I started to sob, and this person turns to me, "Are you okay?" But you just have to have these grief bursts. You have to let it out, because otherwise they'll come back to haunt you.
That's interesting. A person I recently interviewed talked about crying on airplanes and how many times she's flown and been in tears on a plane. And she said she realized that stewardesses or flight attendants, I should say, are probably used to that now. Like she said, they can spot the people who are grieving on the flight, and they tend to be gentle with you because they understand you're going through something.
Well, I had to fly back from Vail. I
Mm.
actually, it was interesting. My friend called me from LA and she said, "Go to the Neptune Society," and I called them right after Peter died, and they said that they could ship the remains, the ashes. And I knew that I could get out of there. And that was so helpful for me to know that he came by priority mail, but he came back to me, and that was a godsend for me. It was just amazing to know that I could get out of there because I was so traumatized.
I was going to say that it has to be so traumatic being now all by yourself in a strange place where you don't really know anyone and you're trying to make arrangements.
I know.
And
I flew by myself. I don't know how I did it. But I flew by myself because I didn't want my son to have to come and get me. And I just, my motherly instinct fed into it. And so I didn't, yeah. But
yeah, I'm sure it seems amazing now that how you even got through that, but somehow you just do. Somehow you do what you have to do.
you do what you have to do. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but
I was curious during your grief journey, were you ever tempted to consult with a medium?
yeah, I know. I decided that an extra small would be
Oh,
my taste.
not a
Sorry.
medium.
I just, I went for an extra small, and I can't. It's too woo woo for me. So anyway, I'm sorry that was a setup, but
Oh, I love it. That's a great answer. But it does sound like you had support and you found it through our house and your counselor, and that maybe made the journey through grief a little smoother for you.
yeah, I saw the counselor twice a week, and I would just sit there and cry. And eventually I started to talk, and I mean, it was just everything was Herculean to try and get through that. And it's no easy task. Grief is not for the faint at heart.
I'm curious, had you and Peter had any conversations before he died about the end of life together or what that might be like?
We did, and he told me that if there is an afterlife, he would nuzzle my left ear. Not so much.
Okay.
I've not felt him. I've not, which makes me a little averse to talk to a medium.
Yeah, I understand that. So far the signs haven't been there if that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And but we did talk about it. We did talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah, because well, it's such a difficult thing to even anticipate because you have no idea what will happen or what the timing might be, and that's why it's such a shock and you feel so totally unprepared when it does happen.
totally unprepared. I mean, I knew he had had some surgery in 2014. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
We're building balconies out here. But I just, I, I couldn't get my head wrapped around the fact that he might die. And I say the word die, I don't say pass, because Peter passed gas, he passed the gravy, but he did not pass away. He died. And it was more clear to me saying the word death um, is clearer to me than just saying pass away, because you pass, but you die.
I think it's really healthy that you use the actual words die and death and dying for yourself, because it kind of confronts our brains, which have a tendency to want to hide away and not look at the reality of death. But that's the healthiest way to approach grief, which we were saying before. You have to just go into it with honesty and head on.
Right. And saying you lost someone, there's an expectation that you're going to find him again. And losing someone, you can people say lose someone, but you don't lose them, because there is this expectation that you're going to find him like an app. There is no find Peter app.
Yeah, push the button, show me where Peter is.
I know. I
Yeah.
just got an Apple Watch and I can find my phone, but I can't find Peter.
Yeah, so very true.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to make sure listeners know that. So your book is full of all these practical suggestions for widows, but you also talk a lot about kind of mystical ideas like, learning how to be in the present moment, and even about impermanence and the fact that nothing lasts and everything changes, and getting used to that in life. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you kind of cover the full spectrum of grief, everything from the day-to-day ordinary things to the more mystical and even kind of spiritual challenges of dealing with grief.
Yeah, there's a feeling that saudade is this Portuguese word that the sailors would feel this emptiness when they would go out to sea, and that's the kind of feeling I have sometimes, this empty feeling. And it's a wonderful word, saudade, saudade, saudade. It just,
I love the sound of
I
that
know.
word, just to say it.
So can I talk about the top 10 things not to say to someone in grief?
Oh, yes, let's definitely talk about that.
All right, he's in a better place.
Hmm.
Absolutely wrong. A better place would be beside me. Everything happens for a reason. There is no rhyme or reason for death. Time heals all wounds? I don't think so. I mean, time over time will get you to the right place, but time doesn't heal. Try not to cry. Forget it. Uh,
That's horrible that someone would
it's
say that to
time
you.
to put this behind you. There's no timetable for grief. At least he lived a long life. That was a killer. Um, there are no comparisons with grief. I know how you feel. So someone said to me, my mother died. I know just how you feel. And I said, no, this is a spouse. It's a whole different ballgame. And let me tell you about my own loss. You're grieving, you don't want to hear anybody else's. And surely you'll find someone. That was a classic. And you'll get through it. Be strong. Well, you can't be strong. You just cry. And I would cry in the supermarket. I would cry in the car. I would cry in the shower. But the top 10 suggestions I would say to someone in grief: I'm sorry for your loss, which is the tried and true. I wish I had the right words. I don't know how you feel, but I am available to help, which takes someone, it's a much better way to say, because the person in grief is reeling and they can't figure out what they're going to do next.
I
Uh,
love that. I love acknowledging that I don't know what your feelings are right now in this moment, and they could be all over the place. You might be angry today, you might be sad today. Maybe today is actually a good day and you're feeling some joy, and I have no idea what any of that is. So I really like that statement a lot.
and it's okay to cry.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite memory of your loved one brings it back to you being ensconced in someone's feelings, and it's important. Please let me know how I can help you, and how are you doing this minute, which is what Sheryl Sandberg said. uh, and say nothing, just put your hand on the person and just calm them down.
I like the permission to say nothing, because I think sometimes people don't show up for friends who are grieving because they aren't sure what to say, or they're afraid they will say the wrong thing, and to realize it's perfectly fine to not say anything, but definitely show up. You
Yeah,
need to know that people care about you, even if they don't know what to say or how to show it. If they just come to the door and just show up, that will make a big difference.
I had a posse of friends that came every day for weeks, and they just would bring wine over and bring food over, and it was so great to be able to talk to my friends and have them around me. And yeah.
Yeah, that can make all the difference. But yeah, I like, thank you for sharing the 10 things to say, because sometimes when we point out what not to say, but we don't tell people what it's okay to say, they walk away thinking, I better not say anything because I don't know what's right. But those are wonderful suggestions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Looking at my list here of what we were going to cover. Oh, I did want to ask, because you are a television chef and a cookbook author, and you know a lot about food, and that's actually how I found you, through a recipe that that was posted online in a blog about grief. And you've included recipes in this book, which I love. So I'm curious why you decided to put the recipes in and what they mean to you.
Just as humor is in my DNA, cooking is in my DNA. And after Peter died, I set the table for 8 and fell in a heap on the floor, forgetting that he wasn't there. And it was very important to pay people back for having taken me to dinner and stuff. And so I started to do these dinner parties. This was pre-pandemic, and it helped me. It helped me immeasurably to comfort people who had comforted me.
Mm. And you, I assume, are an amazing cook, but it seems like preparing food could be therapeutic for even other people who, you don't have to necessarily be a chef or be highly skilled, but just even making the simplest soup or putting some dish together could be therapeutic.
Yeah, I did a risotto with um, uh, uh, pasta instead of pasta uh, as the main ingredient instead of rice, and and you have to stir it and stir it and stir it, and somehow the feeling of this repetition and stirring helps you come back.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. And as this interview airs, it's right before Thanksgiving here in the US. And in the book, I think you mentioned that Thanksgiving was one of Peter's favorite holidays.
Yeah,
And
we would go to his sister's every year, and I will go there this year because my son goes to New York, uh, and um, and it his favorite. I mean, he loved Thanksgiving. I mean, he was a fresser. He loved to eat, and eating was comfort food for him. So the sweet potatoes that I used to do, had marshmallows on top and whatever, but he loved it. He loved it. And so it makes me feel good to participate and to bring a pie over, or I will do some kind of dessert.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to remember for people who are grieving and maybe they're in their first year after the death of someone they've loved. And the holidays can seem so daunting and so impossible. Like, how can I even participate in this? But I think food is a good way to make your loved one's favorite dish and enjoy that together as a way of including them and honoring them.
The holidays are the toughest hurdles to go through, and you have to prepare in advance. You have to know where you're going. You have to feel that you're comfortable. uh the I don't like to say anniversary of the death. I say the marker date, the marker date of when he died. On August 1st, I go out with two friends. We have lunch and we have lobster rolls in his honor.
Hmm.
And we do that, and we drink a toast to him, and we have wine, and it makes me feel better, and I know I'm taken care of because my friends surround me and I don't feel alone. And you have to, with Thanksgiving and Christmas, and if you've had a recent loss, Peter died in August, and I had to get ready for Thanksgiving. And I think I wrote about it. It's just another hurdle to get through.
Definitely. But these are important times when every year that holiday is going to come, and every year you're probably you're going to face it. Your grief may return and you may experience it again every year. So it's good to have a plan and to know how will I do it this year? Where am I going and how will I get through it?
Planning is so key. You have to plan ahead for any of these holidays or marker dates or whatever, the birthday, his birthday in March, our anniversary in February. It just, you have to have a plan.
And I know some people, I hear it often say that the second year of grief is actually worse than the first year. And I was curious if you found that to be true.
Well, I found it tough, but not as tough as the first year. The first year was just, I was in shock. I was in total shock, and I didn't think it would happen. And then it did. And I just couldn't fathom it. I couldn't understand it. But I came to understand it, and I came to feel okay about it. And but the second year, there's an empty feeling. You're not, you're just not a couple anymore. And a lot of people left me standing at the altar because I wasn't a couple, and they're afraid of an extra woman, or I don't know. It's crazy.
That is interesting, how it changes your friendships with couples when your partner is no longer part of like a foursome. And did you have times when you felt like the fifth wheel or like you
Oh,
were
totally,
tagging along?
totally, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just, it's, it's all weird. But you get used to it. You get used to anything, and we all survive. We have this survival instinct. And I never thought um, that I could be okay on my own. And I am. I am. I have come to like myself as a person. I've come to notice myself more, and and it's important to know that you can survive.
Yes, exactly. And now you're being such a good role model for other women who are going through the same thing, and probably even men who are widowers. I don't know for sure. I don't know if men seek comfort in the same way in reading blogs
They,
or going to support groups.
they seek women.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Sorry.
That's a good point though.
Men seem to couple up. You know, somebody said, "Oh, at Hillcrest Country Club, oh my God, you did somebody died," and I said, "Oh, can I get in line?" I mean, it's just if a wife dies, yeah, a husband is a big commodity, and it's sad. It's sad that women are second-class citizens in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so very interesting to think about that right at the time of your life when you have so much wisdom to share and you have so much energy and zest for life and so much to give, and then meeting these obstacles that seem to make it harder to find companionship.
Yeah, I would be happy with just a friend to go to dinner, but didn't happen for me. So it's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Friends. Yeah.
Yeah, and you are making the best of the situation you're in right now.
Hmm. I did move. It took me 3 years, and I was in a big house with many stairs, and I decided to move to a one-level condo. And I'm so glad I did before the pandemic because I felt safer. I felt taken care of, and it's really nice. I was lucky.
That's actually a question I've wondered about, feeling safe, because, after sharing a home with someone, day and night, I've always often wondered about that for myself, if I wouldn't be a little scared at nighttime and just feeling safe in the home alone. Has that ever been an issue for you?
It was. I was nervous about being alone, and it took me 2 or 3 years. And then I realized I had to move to a condo, and they take my packages, and I was lucky enough to get in before the pandemic, and it helped me a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And I think the other issue I worry about is just maintenance, doing home maintenance and some of the tasks I've never done, things I've never done before that my husband takes care of that I don't even think about. Um, I'm sure some of those things have come up as well.
Yes, yeah. But um, but now I have people.
Yes, exact. That's what I would do.
Hello, I have a leak. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You figure out who to call and where to get the help that you
Not
need.
everybody is fortunate enough to have this, and so I tell people to be careful and yeah, just I'm very lucky that I had the finances to do it, but it's a hard road.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I wonder if you would share with us what you feel are the most important things that you've learned on this journey.
Mm. I've learned that I'm okay with me, that I matter, and that I am uh, I've come to like myself more than I ever did as a child. And it's heartening to know that I appreciate myself.
Hmm. That's beautiful.
And I don't have to be a couple in order to do it.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I think when we are part of a couple, we see ourselves through the other person's eyes, and our value comes from how they see us and what they value us for. And there's a whole new learning to take place of figuring out how do I value me just for me without someone else appreciating me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, my husband was the kind of guy who, the minute I got up in the morning with my hair sticking up or whatever, he always was complimenting me, and so I had to dig further and deeper to find that feeling in myself.
Yeah. But it seems like that is a good journey for each one of us to take to learn how to find that deeper love for ourselves.
Right. Right.
And Peter's love probably got you to a place where you're able to do that and able to seek that for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. He just appreciated me so much. And we shared so much. And, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. One person I interviewed about grief said, always ask a grieving person if they'd like to tell a story about their loved one, because she said too often, like, we don't get to tell people who our loved one was. I mean, and that's one of the values I see in your blog. You're able to tell a lot of stories about Peter and share Peter with everyone through the blogs. And I think that's also really, really lovely.
He was, as a grandfather, he was Duke because we have a grandson named Lucas who's now 19, but and one day he called him Luke the Duke, and he said, "No, you Duke."
Oh,
And so that's how he got his name. And we were Duke and Lala, and being a grandparent was the best. It was the best. It was just so fulfilling, and I would follow them at school, and it was just great. Now they're teenagers, so it's hard.
everything changes a little at that stage.
It does. It does. But he was a funny man, and he had a wonderful sense of humor, and made me laugh all the time.
And what good fortune that was, as someone who values humor, to have a spouse who's humorous as well. I'm sure that your relationship was fun.
It was. It was. It was amazing. Yeah.
Well, Laurie, are you still blogging? Are you still writing blogs regularly?
I'm sort of blogged out.
Yeah.
But you come to the end, and you sort of have covered everything. But I woke up one day and I said, I can do this book as a romantic comedy. And so I got a producer on board pre-pandemic, and she got two other producers, and we just sold it as a romantic comedy to a film company. And I'm hoping something will come of it, and I'll have
Wow.
a second chapter in
Oh,
my.
that'll be a wonderful new project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing about that. But I'll remind listeners, all your blogs are there on your website, right, at lauriegrad.com, so people can go there and read them. And then the book is just an amazing wealth, as I said before, of practical information, but also just some of your explorations of more existential, emotional, spiritual issues.
Yeah, I would take a word like sodade, or um, just and explore it and feel it, and write about it. And writing for me is therapeutic. So
Yeah, I'm sure that just writing the blog did a lot for you get on this journey, getting you through the
totally,
process.
totally got me through.
So
And
highly recommended.
others around the world also, and they would write to me, and other widows who follow me.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you discovered you're kind of part of this whole community of other people on a similar journey, not exactly the same, but other people who are also dealing with grief. And I imagine you felt less alone after hearing from those people.
I did. I did. And as I said before, finding meaning is my purpose. So
Yes, yes. That's really beautiful. Well, I'll say the title again. The book is "The Joke's Over. You Can Come Back Now," which I imagine that you must have felt that many times. Like, if only this were just a joke, and you would come back. How this widow plowed through grief and survived, by Laurie Burrows Grad. And where can people get a hold of the book?
it's on Amazon.
So,
Amazon. Yeah.
and is
It's
it an
very,
audio book? Is it
uh,
an audio book?
no, I never did an audiobook, but yeah. My brother just did, directed by James Burrows, and I listened to him in his high nasal squawk. But it was, yeah, yeah. I self-published it, and it's been very rewarding.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. So I highly recommend it to read for yourself or give to someone as a gift, because it seems to me this could be really helpful if you know someone who's experiencing widowhood right now, who would find a lot of comfort.
Someone just called me, my friend's brother, and he said his wife had died by suicide, and that's a whole other ball game. And I tried to help him through his pain, but there's such anger and such frustration with suicide. It's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, Laurie, thank you. Thanks for writing the book and your blogs, and thank you for taking time to talk to me today. It's
Absolutely.
it's really been enjoyable.
And thank you for interviewing me.
You're so welcome, and I can't wait to see the rom-com when it comes out.
I'll let you know, Karen.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. Take
Oh,
care.
I did a tattoo.
Oh, I see your tattoo. Oh,
PG loves PG. Yeah,
oh,
I
that's
did.
that's sweet. I
Yeah.
like it. I like that a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Laurie Grad. As promised, Laurie uses humor as her way of coping with grief, and I'm sure that was obvious in our conversation, but also if you read her wonderful book. So remember to join me again in another week with another new video. Until then, take care and goodbye.